So, I'm Amy Gardin, and I'm going to present to you guys today about self and the internet, an exploration of self-focus in the language and structure of digitally mediated communication. And because this project lends itself so well to a more thematic approach, I'm going to foreground for you guys my inspiration and process before I talk more about my study. So, introduction, the ideas of democracy, and some of our talks in class about the democratization of the internet are what really led me to have the drive to do a project like this. For example, we've spoken in previous projects about Naomi Barron. She is a leader in the linguistics field, a professor of linguistics. And in her book, Always On, she uses the phrase language czar. And she says, in this new age of internet, everybody is becoming a language czar. We all have our own responsibilities along with total control that makes us czars over the language and how we present ourselves online. And in one of her later chapters, she also discusses how the internet allows us to all have our own say. Everybody has an audience. Everybody has a forum to present themselves in the way that they want to make themselves, other than, this body that we're stuck with and how we dress to present ourselves. I didn't get the dress memo today, and neither did Andy. And so this new forum for self-presentation and has really given everybody a chance to become a language czar, to control what we say and what we do online. And this leads me to De Zuniga and Valenzuela's report, which Andy mentioned. They're more sociologists, professors, but the study we read by them involved them studying a group of Americans of many different races and socioeconomic backgrounds, and they really went a long way towards proving how the internet and digitally mediated communication like Facebook have become a way to have true democracy, if you will. They actually found that in some cases there were more minorities, more people of a poorer background on Facebook and using tools like Facebook and other social networking sites to their advantage, even more so than more wealthy or more higher people in a higher social standing, if you will. And so digitally mediated communication has become an equalizer of sorts. And so it's a tool for empowerment and democracy, but what has that democratization of the internet become? What does it lead to? And so I was looking at some similar studies to the one I did by Laura Buffardi and W. Keith Campbell, who are a professor and associate professor graduate student pair who looked at narcissism on social networking sites. And this was just fascinating. And how they looked at narcissism was not as like narcissism, the disorder, the medical mental disorder, but they looked at traits of narcissism. They looked at provocative and self-promoting photos and self-promoting statements, and as well those two paired up with a few other colleagues in a later study, Nathan Dewall, and looked at narcissism and attention-seeking in language on social networking sites. And this study found that in my study, they looked at first-person pronouns, and they found that when more first-person pronouns were used, like I and my, that there was less aggressive language and profane words and fewer provocative photos. When it was reversed, though, there were more provocative photos and things like that. So this is all about how social networking and digitally mediated communication has started to create a culture of less democratization and more focus on the self, because everybody can have a voice. We all focus on our own voices. And so, in my study, I wanted to look at the websites FMyLife and MyLifeIsAverage.com as two websites that promote a culture of self-focus. And so I chose these websites because they're both very similar websites. And I think Lauren was saying before that it's a blog, you started to describe My Life as Average. It's a blog that people around the world can use to post stories, or both of them are blogs that people around the world that can use to post stories about themselves. I feel like you need a step stool. And they're essentially just little quips. There's no word limit or anything like that as with Twitter, but they're usually fairly short, and they start off, you know, today I fell into a puddle and lost $20, F my life, things like that. And so I wanted to provide a more specific study than the previous studies, than Bafardi's and things like that. And also I wanted to show how these narcissistic traits, which I refer to as self-focus, just to draw away from that medical mental condition and connotations with that, but show how these notions on social networking sites, which was the focus of the other studies, are pervading into the rest of the internet. Because these are sites that are less social networking and more just in that blog format, or just post. They are supposed to connect readers and users around the world, but I want to look at how they do not connect people, how they actually promote this culture of self-focus, and they become sites for talking about one's day, a forum for talking about one's day instead of connecting with others. So the steps of the study, I did 2 parts. I looked at an AMP-CONC linguistic analysis, and then I looked at the voting methods of each. The AMP-CONC linguistic analysis, I took 5 pages from the FML website, or I took them in 5-page groups. Starting in April, I took 5 pages from the first, starting April 12th and going back, and then 5 pages from the middle, because each of these sites keep a really good archive, and FML started in 2008, and so I took 5 pages from the beginning, 5 pages from the middle, and 5 pages from when the site first started, just to get a good mix of times and people and places that these people came from and things like that. And I did the same thing with MyLifeIsAverage.com, except for 8 pages, because those posts were generally shorter, and I was trying to go for a similar word amount in each corpus. And so I had a separate corpus for FML and MLIA posts, and I searched for the frequency of I, me, and my in each corpus versus the frequency of you, we, and our. So first person pronouns versus pronouns that denote collectivity of sort. And then for the voting process analysis, I looked at the number of affirming and denying votes on each site. And so for FML, you could vote that to affirm a post and say, yes, I agree, your life is average, or no, you deserved it. And for MLIA, you can vote and say, yeah, your life is average, which in this case, average is good, like, oh, fun. It kind of changes the meaning of the word average as we know it. Or you can say, meh. It's just one word, meh, so not so average, not so fun. And so looking at the results, the FML corpus, I and my were ranked 1st and 5th, which they got 596 and 232 occurrences out of 10,448 words, respectively. So that's the word list. Is it big enough that everybody can read? Yes, success. But yeah, so you can see here that I is at the very top, and in a concordance it showed that I was used in a varied manner, which will be pertinent in just a moment, that it's used in a varied manner. Because when I talk about you, you can see that you occurs 8th, which kind of goes against my original hypothesis going into this study, and I was a little bit worried. But whenever you click on the word you see that it all occurs in the voting mechanism except for one time at number 4, thank you, eBay buyer. And so it's not varied, and so that I kind of took into account and took out to agree that you is a repeated phrase and doesn't actually refer to an audience. It doesn't actually refer to other people. It's still focused on the self. It's just part of their little voting mechanism. And in the MLIA corpus, I was again the most frequently occurring word with 585 occurrences out of 10,904 words, and my was the 10th most frequently occurring word. The only things that really separate I and my are not as, don't want to be rude to the other words, but not as important words like to and the. Average is also built into the voting mechanism, as well as MLIA and meh and comments. So I found that to be significant as well. And we and our only occurred 29 and 9 times respectively out of 10,900 words. Just let that sink in. 29 and 9 times. So this is showing how few times our occurs. It's right up there with playing and ran. So, I mean, these are really shocking results. And then as far as the voting results go, both MLIA and FML use the same voting mechanisms, which I've already explained to you guys. And so in this concordance showing the votes, the ones immediately to the right of average go with that. And the same for meh. The ones immediately to the right of meh go with meh. And so you can see how all of the ones that are affirming average are in the triple digits, but all the ones voting meh are in the double digits. So it's interesting to see this dynamic of linguistic and social compounded to build this culture of self-focus. Not only do you have to talk about yourself, but you need to be affirmed in these votes. And the same goes with FML. The Your Life Sucks, it gets, like the top one, Your Life Sucks has 737 votes, and You Deserve It has 181 votes. If you can see, that's the numbers. And Comp did these a little strangely in format. But yeah, so this need for affirmation compound in the votes compounds with the linguistic references to I and my that so outweigh references to we and our. And so what does this mean? Kim Hyland, who is another leader in the field of linguistic studies of digital mediated communication, like Tiffany referred to him in stance and engagement, he asserted in this article, Stance and Engagement, that we is the most frequently used engagement device in academic writing. That he says you and our and we are used by academics in their papers to establish a community with their readers, to establish a sense of shared knowledge. However, this is not being done in websites like these. We're not engaging with audiences as we perhaps should be, because these do have an audience. These do connect us with people around the world, and yet we aren't acknowledging this, and we are engaging with these people. So what does this mean for implications on our culture? Because sites like these are becoming more and more frequent online. FML and MLIA are also very similar to Text from Last Night and Dear Blank, Please Blank, things like that. So there are more and more of these sites popping up. And so this is a very relevant thing to study and to look at, even more so than the social networking sites that Buffardi and DeWall studied. And as Barron states, these online, as Naomi Barron states in her same book, Always On, these online interactions like this really do have an effect on our real life social interactions and culture. We're all familiar with the term, or all of us in the class are familiar with the term volume control, how we use our actions online to control the volume, to either ignore that email from a friend of mine, to answer this Facebook post immediately, and things like that. So they have a real life implication on the culture. Now, there are some caveats to this study. The fact that it is a rather small study and isn't as broad as it could be. And also, it doesn't address one question which Dr. All and I discussed in some of our meetings, is why people voted if they only wanted affirmation for their self-focus or their narcissism. Why would you want to vote and affirm someone else? So that's something that could be explored in a future study. As well, future studies could use anthropologists and sociologists to draw even more conclusions, to look back at the effects of this on our actual culture and in real life, and how these trends spread across culture from online to real life, if you will. And so those are just some things that I was thinking about whenever I did this study and found to be really pertinent to our class as a whole. So thank you guys. There's Narcissus up at the top, or a painting of Narcissus up at the top right, and then Narcissism Now in online. So